Hi, welcome to our final talk on careers in arts management. My name is Nadia. I'm a third-year theatre student and I've recently just joined the Mousetrap Youth Forum.
And my name's Batseba. My pronouns are she and her, and I've been part of the Youth Forum for about a year and a half. I've just finished A-levels this year, so I'm currently on a gap year, hoping to go to drama school. So right now my year, I'm just doing everything and anything, just trying to learn basically. And these are our three amazing panelists that we have today. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi everybody, my name is Yamin Choudury. I am the Artistic Director at Hackney Empire.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Dear and I'm the Executive Director at Hightide Theatre. We're a new writing theatre company.
Hi there everyone, my name's Lian. I am the Executive Producer of New Earth Theatre, which creates work with British East and Southeast Asian artists.
And so the first question to kick it off is, what is your typical day? So what does that look like? You can start with Yamin and we can go down.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's my typical day? There is no typical day. We do everything at Hackney Empire, from comedy to music to theatre to opera, dance, film shoots, photo shoots and everything in between. A lot of it is management, so making sure that the organisation is running as effectively as possible while maintaining our ambition and scope artistically. So I do a huge amount of that, or I'll be in rehearsal. The last kind of 18, 24 months has been just endless meetings, not a lot of doing very much of anything at all. So yeah, a lot of variety. And it's hard to describe, I guess, in a few sentences what that is on a day-to-day basis. But if you like variety and if you like to be kept on your toes, that's kind of what my job is like.
Nice. For me, again, there is no day that's ever the same. Hightide is based between Ipswich in the east of England and London. So in an average week, I'm half my time in Ipswich, half my time in London. So there's quite a lot of time on trains and trying to make train Wi-Fi work, which is a challenge. For me, a lot of my time is spent sitting between the work that our artistic director does in terms of shaping the creative vision for the organisation and working with the broader staff team. So a lot of my work is finding ways to interpret and channel and make sure that we're resourced properly to do what we need to do. So in a nutshell, that's meetings and spreadsheets, both of which I enjoy because I'm weird. But certainly there's a lot of time spent trying to make sure that our plans and our ideas can be matched up with our resources, and whether that's the financial resources in terms of grants that we get, money that we've raised, income that we've earned, but also our staff team. We're quite a small team, but we work with lots of freelancers as well. So it's making sure that we've got the people and the money that we need to do the really great ideas that we have.
And just following on from that, I think the idea that we're just as much as storytellers as artistic directors are. The artistic director and the executive director are both there to tell the story of the company and what the values are and what it stands for and what we're going to do. The artistic director usually does that in words, and the executive director usually does that in money and budgets and finance, with, of course, the crossover with discussion, strategic planning, very much at the core of both the roles at the executive level. But it's very much in terms of having the heart of the company and being able to express what the entire company stands for, what they believe in, what they're interested in, comes from the messaging that comes from the top and from the admin roles itself. So there is a lot of responsibility with that and a lot of discussions and communication and creativity coming from it. But yes, that does involve a lot of admin, a lot of meetings, and as touring companies, just travelling across the country or internationally, and being able to share that work and how, and share that vision.
Precisely, and I just wanted to say, it doesn't make you weird at all to timesheets and Zoom calls, and that goes out to anyone. Just because you're in a creative industry you don't have to feel like you have to like everything creative. You can be really structured and organized, and there's a space for you in the industry as well. So if you like meetings and if you like timesheets, then you like them, be proud of it. You want to go on for our next question?
Okay, moving on a little bit. If I were sitting in the audience right now, I would think, wow, your position is a little bit, it feels a bit unrealistic. So what would be like a realistic action plan for any young people watching or anyone in the audience that wants to be in your position?
That's a big question. Shall I go first again? Or?
If you feel you've got it, then go.
I don't have anything. I really do. I'm surprised Siobhan asked me back. I've never had an action plan. It was hard for me to even guess when I was growing up that this was a realistic outcome for me. I didn't have any kind of aspirations to run an organisation, especially one as renowned as the Hackney Empire. I was never more skilled or more educated than my peers or my contemporaries, but I was very driven. I just wanted to be, I guess the narcissistic part of me just wanted to be recognised for doing well. And so that mixture of drive and a little bit of desperation made me adaptable and dynamic and innovative. I was willing to do what other people weren't. I started off cleaning stages and making teas. So I think it's more about attitude, how you talk to people, how you treat people, what your work ethic is like, what you want for yourself. Not just having dreams and kind of ambition, but looking at what makes that tangible, what makes that measurable. Those are really good lessons. As far as an action plan goes, I can't tell you. I think it's really about just doing your best at whatever it is that you do.
I think to build on that, my mum has a really great theory, which is that if you walk into a room like a church hall or something, and there's going to be a rehearsal, and if you walk in the room and there's a pile of chairs and somebody's setting out the chairs, you're either the kind of person that helps them or stands back and thinks that it's somebody else's job. Now, I'm a chair shifter. If I walk into that room, I'm going to be helping whoever it is set the chairs out. And I think that really is at the heart of how I see my passion about my job, is that I like to have my finger in all the pies. It's the kind of role that I've developed within my career is one where I'm not a specialist. So I'm not a specialist in marketing. I'm not a specialist artistic director. I'm not programming, but I do get to think about all of those things. I'm not my job isn't now primarily producing, but I get to have an oversight and an interest in all of those things. So for me, it's about where your level of interest sits. So if you're involved in something, whether you're doing it as a hobby at an amateur level, whether it's something you're doing at college, whether you've got your foot in the door and you're in your first job, for me, it's about finding where your interest lies within the other things and, not just being kind of siloed into what your job is. That, I'm a marketing assistant, so I can't ask the finance director how they do their job, or I'm sitting in a box office role, but I really want to know how the producing team put things together. Like, ask questions. That's how I kind of develop my work, and partly it's driven from nosiness and a desire to want to make myself helpful. And I think that's how I would, as you say, it's a state of mind. It's not I can't say, oh, go and do this course, or, sign up to do that study or go on to that training course, whatever it might be. But for me, it's about fingers in pies, which I think in COVID times I need to find a better phrase to use. Don't put your COVID-y fingers in other people's pies. You know what I mean?
Well, you say nosiness, but I like to say it's curiosity, and I think all of us were talking about it in some sense, where I think theatre is such a collaborative process, and any theatre company you work for, theatre, there's always those certain quirks and the different way it works and so forth. So having that overview of how everything runs, how everything connects together is always helpful. I started off not thinking I'll get into theatre at all. I was going down the translation languages routes. I'm very much an explorer and loving languages, and I had a great school that allowed me to get involved with theatre. To the point where I was the loser that went to all the rehearsals when I didn't need to be there. And that's how I discovered stage management, being able to know exactly where people needed to be, and being able to time manage and get everyone in position and so forth. And my journey into theatre then became, I'll try a bit of stage management, I'll try a bit of prop sourcing, looking at lighting, sound. My first professional job was as a technician in a theatre company, and that's when I found out I didn't want to be a technician. I'm small, I don't really like that, as in that was never really going to work out.
Yeah.
But what I found was, even though I was doing very much the round the houses route of getting into this and getting into producing, all of that knowledge was helpful for me, because when I'm in a conversation with someone talking about why this won't work in this time frame, or why we need more money for something which I can't quite see, having that experience of knowing just the basics of lighting design or sound engineering and so forth helps me understand that little bit better and be able to have those much more productive conversations. And I guess my big piece of advice which I tend to give people is it's not about going credit after credit, project after project. Really look at the position that you're in at the moment. If you have an opportunity to assistant produce or assist an event, if you're able to have a coffee with the producer and talk through the budgets, if you're able to look at a marketing plan, not only is it useful for your own time and your own contacts and being able to build those relationships, but you actually understand a lot more of where things are going right and where things are going wrong. So if someone can talk through a budget with you and say, yes, and this is a line for marketing, and as you can see, it was tiny, and then you can see that in the marketing of that show, you can see that in the audience figures and so forth, you do then a lot more. And I think it's those conversations and really just absorbing what's happening around you whilst you're doing those projects is my best piece of advice, I'd say.
Amazing. And on that note, for each and every one of you, what do you think is your biggest responsibility in your role? And on top of that, how do you then hold yourself accountable? And if you do, how do you encourage your workplace to hold you accountable to that responsibility as well?
I'm not going first for this one.
Yeah, that's a big, big question. First and foremost, I would say that I'm accountable for the well-being of the team within the organisation, and that's broader for me than just the permanent staff members. It's about how we work with the freelancers that we work with on a regular basis. It's about the writers and creatives that we support and have supported in the past. A lot of our work is around developing new voices. So for us, a really important thing is that, say, we've worked with an emerging writer through a script reading process and have given them feedback on that. Our relationship with them doesn't end when that process has finished. We want to feel like we're building a relationship that supports them through their career. So there's definitely a kind of people-led responsibility. There are then a whole load of statutory responsibilities as the executive of an organisation I have, and whether that's for reporting on funding to people like Arts Council England or to other funders, trusts and foundations. There's a statutory responsibility and a legal responsibility that I hold in terms of reporting to Companies House or the Charity Commission. So that, again, is a kind of pretty big one to deal with on an ongoing basis. Obviously, that has very clear accountability. If I don't do that, then there's like legal ramifications for all of those kind of things. The question that you asked, and a really interesting one about how other people hold me accountable to that. Obviously, we have a board of directors who have an oversight for the organisation, and that oversight is around governance, but they also have the ultimate responsibility. So I guess, they're my bosses. So there is a reporting process. We have a 360-degree process of how we go about like annual reviews and things. So it's not just about sort of a top-down led thing. It's very much a holistic approach to how we assess how well we're all doing within our jobs and how it works. We're a really small team. There's only 5 of us. So it's you get quite immediate feedback if you're not doing things well, I think, and that perhaps within larger organisations that I've worked in, it's been harder to see where that accountability sits. But within, you know, a small organisation like Hightide, it's pretty immediate, and we're also that holistic approach to how we support our artists and our writers and our communities is also how we treat each other. So, you know, we have we put a lot of care and we seek a lot of joy in the work that we do. And that's as much about my relationships with my colleagues as it is with the work that we produce and how we take work to our audiences. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that was perfect.
I think everything that Lindsey just said, and I think I'm only just going to add a small thing, I guess, from my end, which is, you know, when it comes to accountability and kind of your own responsibility and where you stand, you need to be prepared to be able to kind of believe in what you've said or believe in what you're doing, or be able to put your hands up and say, I've made a mistake, and this is how I'm going to fix it. I think we all come into roles knowing that we're not going to be perfect. We'll pretend in the interviews, but after that, we're all learning, and it's a growing process all the way through, and that's something which we appreciate across the entire company, whether that is at executive level as the artistic directors, as the executive directors, or to the producers, to the box office staff, to front of house, and so forth. And just having that openness of, these are the things we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is what, you know, the values that you hold and the company holds really come to fore. And then being able to then take responsibility when things don't go to a plan, and when you do have to step back and think, why did this go wrong, is what makes a good, in my view, a good company and a good executive producer.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of theatre isn't for me. It's not made for me. It's not made for the people where I come from. It's not made for the communities that I grew up with. And I think that the kind of elitist attitudes that exist within our sector have to be torn down, and it's the responsibilities of organisations like Hackney Empire and these two other incredible organisations who are sat beside me to tear those down, and understand that actually as much as we love what we do, it's only serving a very, very small minority of our communities, and that's just not good enough. So making sure that everything that we do is interrogating and challenging how that privilege sits, that's the biggest one in terms of my accountability. There's no final solution to that. There's no one person that's going to be able to say, oh, this is how you do it, and this is who you do it with. So it's a constant learning process and a sharing process. We also operate a completely non-hierarchical structure at Hackney Empire. So everybody should be able to feed into every single decision if they feel strongly about it. And that kind of manifests in small ways where we have a completely open plan office. I know that sounds strange to bring it up now, but it means that ideas are often being shouted at between different departments and different people in this space. And if somebody wants to respond or interject or provoke with that, then they have that space to do so. And so I guess with Empire, what we're constantly trying to do is create those safe spaces to not take anything for granted. Even my way of seeing the world or how I would do things, because I certainly have my biases and my discriminations that I'm not aware of. So when we position ourselves in that capacity, it's really, really important that we're getting as many people to the table as possible in our internal decision-making process, because that's what we're trying to justify for everybody else.
Thank you so much. I mean, just following on from that, how are all of you ensuring that your decisions are reflective of your community and aims and potential societal barriers?
For me, it's they're there. We don't, you know, I see so many project proposals where audience is the final couple of pages in the proposal, like who it's for and how you're going to reach them. And I just think that that's crazy. If you're not doing it with the very people in mind that you want to target with information, with stories, with ideas, with understanding, then what's the point? Centralize them. Keep them at the beginning, middle, and end of your process. As if they're not, then you're doing it for the sake of doing it, or because I feel it's important.
Yeah.
Who cares what I think?
1000%.
We have these big stages like this one, like my one at Empire. It's not my little playground. It's not the opportunity for me to write the biography of my ideas and the stories that I feel are important. It has to be a speaker's corner where people who feel passionately about things that need to be shared are enabled to share them. So start with them in that way and keep them there. And a lot of the times when you're doing these types of discussions, you're having to approach it from the point of view that I have an answer for you. We don't have the answer at Empire. We're just trying harder to find one. So that work in progress is part of that sharing, not only amongst ourselves internally, but across the sector.
Precisely, and I agree with you 100%. I'm so sorry to cut it short here, but we need to move on to our Q&A section and pass on to our lovely attendees, both in person and online. So we can start with online first. Oh, no, actually, let's start with in-house. Does anyone have any questions for our lovely panelists today? Don't all jump at the mic at once. There we go.
So my question is, like, it's a bit weird to think at this stage of our career that we go into arts management. I couldn't see myself just jumping in and assuming that I'm going to be able to run an organisation when I'm older. I've got the right skills for that. So how do you see yourself getting into this position? What qualities do you think would make someone a good, like, theatre manager? And what do you feel makes you guys different from your colleagues that you've gone up to this management position, or do you think it's just a right place, right time situation?
So the question was, it's quite hard to see jumping straight into management. So what are the qualities in you that you feel stand out from your colleagues? And what do you need to sort of go into those management positions? Have I got that right?
It's a very good question, and I think it comes under the term management of how can you manage something you don't know. And I think from a very basic level, if you think of a role of producer looking after project after project, or a small collection of projects over a portfolio, when it comes to executive producing, it's very much looking at those projects all at the same time, and how those projects then create that story of that company, and having that narrative of a much bigger scale, more big picture. So in terms of qualities, you're thinking of good organisational skills, good communication skills to be able to really manage a team, being good under pressure. And I also want to put in their creativity as well. Creativity in being able to translate ideas into logistics, whether that's timelines, whether that's budgets, whether that's even being able to communicate different projects to different audiences, whether that's funders, whether that's audience members, whether that's cast and creatives. And I think we all make theatre because we want theatre to be joyous and having joy in our lives. So the both producing role and executive producing role having to be almost quite far removed from the in rehearsal room project base. Not that we don't do it, like I love going into a rehearsal room, but being able to have that faith that the joy is being made as you sit, you know, neck deep in numbers and documents is what I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think there's a skill that I know that I certainly have, and I know others who have it, and I can see when it is lacking in other people. And it's like that weird, like, juggling of having the very immediate things which have extremely tight deadlines, that being able to see like the middle distance, but also having a really clear understanding of what the future might look like and what shape that might take, and also having about I guess it's like, I don't know, scaling a mountain and knowing that you've got at least 3 different routes up the mountain you can take, depending on whether it's going to snow or get foggy or chuck it down with rain. That either way you can, you know, it's not just about planning and having those strategic thoughts and being able to deal with the everyday and the sort of more midterm stuff, but it's also how you build in space and time, if not actually, but in your own brain, for dealing with things when they don't go to plan. And I think that's, I think I also, along with my perverse love of spreadsheets, I also don't mind it when things go a bit wrong, because that's a challenge and it's an interesting way of doing things. And sometimes you can end up with a far more creative solution because you haven't taken the route that you thought you were going to go to get there. So I think it's about, you know, as Lian said, there's a lot around being organised and having really excellent attention to detail and being generally interested and a bit nosy and everything. And also, for me, I could never work in anything that doesn't result in some kind of performance to the public that people enjoy at the end of it. Like, it's the applause at the end is the bit that I like. And so the process of getting there can feel quite fraught sometimes. It can certainly feel busy and stressful and involve long hours, which again is another facet of our business that is, you know, there's a whole load of stuff that is not great in theatre and arts management around how it's structured and supported. And, you know, as you get older and lives change and families start to become factored in, and anybody with caring responsibilities, I mean, there's a whole heap of stuff that make it really, really difficult in a lot of ways. And hopefully we can find routes to change some of that, and there's some interesting conversations going on. But yeah, as you said, at the end of the day, it's who you're making it for and why you're doing it. For, you know, for Hightide, it's about new voices. It's about a diverse range of exciting stories that are joyous and pertinent and that we can bring to the widest range of people. So,
Thank you so much. I think we have a question online.
Yeah, so for people at the beginning of their career, so a bit behind all of you, what advice would you give for someone setting up their own production company? Like a small one.
yeah.
For people a bit further behind.
Find your tribe. I think that's important regardless of whatever stage of your career that you're at. Discover the stories that you want to tell, discover the people that you want to share that with, and then help discover the people that are going to enable you to do that. It's really important that you have these support structures and understand that you're not responsible to do everything that you imagine or that you dream of. Some people want to help you make that happen. They don't necessarily want to present their imagination. They want to find somebody else's incredible vision and present that. And so those different skill sets exist. And just going on to the last question, you know, in terms of the creation of that, it is hard to imagine, but you've got to imagine it. You have to think that it's possible. And not only that it's possible, but that it's feasible and doable, and start mapping out what that looks like. And I think that really takes a network or a community to do. So discover those people and don't just look in your backyards. Look far and wide, because exceptionalism exists everywhere. It's just not being exposed all the time.
Amazing. Any more last questions? Do you have any online?
I have a question. What are some of your biggest limits or challenges in doing the work that you're doing?
Finding the time to do everything is probably the big challenge. That sense of, I think there's always something that we can be doing, and that's where the conversation of you're not doing enough is always that growing kind of obstacle we always have to kind of overcome. That feeling that there's the very concrete structural things like a show is going on, or you need to raise money for this and so forth. But when it comes to how do you change your company for the better, that is, you know, we can all change. We can always go better, and we know every one of us, if we didn't already know, it's very obvious now that theatre, as much as we love it, is not perfect. There's so much structurally we need to change, things that there's no longer the need to take it as a given. There's always that innovation, and we all go into the industry with a sense of creativity and aspirations, and being able to feel that you're in a position to make that change and pass it through is something which comes with confidence, comes with experience, comes with knowing, not only knowing what the job entails and what you're overseeing, but believing in yourself to make that next step.
Do you want us to add to that?
Yeah, of course, please do. Please.
I want to say the biggest challenge for me is that both personally and professionally, I'm over-ideaed and under-resourced. Loads of ideas, can't do them all. And so it's, you know, finding that balance, and that, I say that across my career, across certainly within this job, is a major thing about how we find those balances and how we, there's a really, but as we come out of the pandemic and try, and there's been a lot of questions around some of the structures that have enabled and supported theatres and where there needs to be some really major change. There's a real risk that we run to, that we go safe, and it's how we maintain seeking out new voices, how we take new stories, how we make sure that we are open to as many people that want to be involved with our work, and that it's not restricted by your education or where you live or what you look like. You know, there's a whole heap of barriers that we all know too well, and I'd hope that certainly at Hightide we want to feel like we're making a difference to those things. But again, that comes back to the lots of ideas, not enough money side of things. But a lot of it's not about money, it's just about change, and that's hard. And I think sometimes it's easier for a small organisation because we're pretty nimble. We're agile yet fragile is a great phrase that gets used a lot for our kind of organisation, and I think it's a helpful one to think about.
Most definitely. And Yamin?
I don't love theatre. I love theatre when it's good. Like, I don't love my TV when I'm not watching it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes I get bored with the same, I'm just reiterating what these two have said more eloquently before me, but I get bored kind of looking at a very homogenous, canonical offer. And, you know, particularly post-pandemic, during the beginnings of COVID, every Zoom call was about radical change and chasing transformation. And then we reopened and I saw more of the same. And so frustration, boredom kind of pushes you away from it. And so reattaching yourself when it sometimes just feels like a long fight is difficult. When it's great though, I think when theatre is at its best, it's one of the greatest things I've ever experienced. And so the constant pursuit of happiness in that way makes it worth it.
Most definitely.
Thank you so much. I think that's all of the time that we have for today. Thank you so much to everybody watching. Thank you for everyone in the audience. And thank you so much to our incredible panelists. You guys are just, you're incredible. And I've taken so much away from this personally. I know everybody else has too. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.